All right, let's talk about the Karen Read case. There's this wild story that's been bubbling up, and it's not even about the trial itself, it's about the evidence. We're going to dive into a massive data leak that raises some pretty serious questions about how law enforcement is operating here. I mean, just think about this for a second. How on earth does a decade and a half of someone's private phone data, we're talking texts, photos, contacts, everything, end up out in the open? And get this, released by the very people who are supposed to be protecting it. So this all blew up in April of 2024. The complete, totally unredacted phone data of a key person in this whole affair, Lindsey Gaetani, was just leaked. And I'm not just talking about a couple of messages. We're talking about her entire digital life laid bare for everyone to see. 15 years. Just let that sink in. Imagine everything on your phone going all the way back to the mid-2000s, just suddenly becoming public information. It's a huge breach of privacy, and it makes you ask one thing right away. How could this possibly happen? Okay, so to figure out how this went down, we really have to look at the people involved. And trust me, it is a complicated web of state troopers, private investigators, and even online operatives, all connected in some really crucial ways. Let's try to untangle this a bit. You've got State Police Officer Brian Tully. He's the one who allegedly leaked the data. Then there's Kate Peter, a private investigator. And what's really weird is that her messages with Gaetani were mysteriously scrubbed from the data before it got out. Trooper Nick Guarino is the one who processed the data. And all of this whole handover, happened while the special prosecutor, Ken Mello, was literally in the hospital. The theory is that this was all meant to protect people like Jen McCabe, who's a key witness in the main case. So how did this happen? Well, one story being floated is that it was just a series of clumsy accidents, a real comedy of errors that, whoops, resulted in a massive data breach. As you can probably guess, not a lot of people are buying that one. So the accident theory, and you gotta hear this, goes something like this. An officer tripped. Okay, and while he was stumbling, he just happened to perfectly edit a cell phone extraction, removing very specific messages. Then, apparently he morphed into a snowball, rolled down the highway, and tumbled right into the defense lawyer's office, delivering the data. You know, a total accident. Yeah, as one source put it, it's just ludicrous. You don't trip and fall and end up in that situation. It makes no sense. So, if it wasn't some bizarre accident, what was it? Well, there's a much more compelling argument out there, that this leak was no accident. It was a deliberate, calculated move. And there's actually evidence that points right in that direction. Just consider these points for a minute. A clumsy trip doesn't explain why specific messages from Trooper Tully himself and from PIK Peter were surgically removed from the data. It also doesn't explain the timing. Why would Tully hand-deliver this package, personally, while the one guy who could provide any oversight, Prosecutor Ken Mello, was out of commission in the hospital? And this isn't just speculation. This is Special Prosecutor Ken Mello testifying in court. He confirms it. He says that while he was hospitalized, his colleague, Tully, delivered the evidence package. This tells us that someone took it upon themselves to act, while their superior was unavailable. So let's just lay it all out, side by side. In one corner, you have the accident theory, which, involves snowballs and doesn't explain any of the key facts, like the edited data. And in the other corner, you have the intentional leak theory. This one actually explains the missing messages and is backed up by court testimony and some seriously suspicious timing. So that brings us to the biggest question of all, right? If this was a deliberate act by a member of law enforcement, what was the motive? Why on earth would an officer intentionally leak 15 years of someone's private life? Well, according to the sources we're looking at, the answer is just one word: distraction. The whole point of this massive data dump was to create a media frenzy, a public circus, and completely change the conversation. And what was the goal of this distraction? It was allegedly to get everyone to stop looking at other key figures in the case, specifically people who were friends of the police unit, like Jen McCabe and PIK Peter. By throwing Gaetani's entire private life out there, they could seize control of the public narrative at a really critical moment and create one heck of a diversion. This story is so much bigger than just a data leak. It's really about the alleged weaponization of evidence, and it leaves us with a really unsettling question. What happens to justice when evidence isn't being used to find the truth, but is instead being used as a weapon to control a story?